Nigeria has a remarkable opportunity to harness the power of accountability and catapult its governance into a new era of transparency, citizens' engagement, and responsible leadership by strengthening its institutions and empowering citizens to demand accountability. Nigeria can unlock its full potential and build a brighter future for all. Effective governance is within reach, and by prioritizing accountability, Nigeria can ensure that power is exercised in the best interest of its citizens, fostering a culture of trust, transparency, and progress. But at the end of the day, is this possible? Is this enforceable in Nigeria? This is the Eastern Eye. I am Alex Ogbodo. Welcome to the Eastern Eye, a program that X-rays the political, social, and economic developments around us. Joining me tonight is Sir Abuchi Anueyiagu. He is the veteran journalist and public affairs analyst. Thank you so much, Sir Anueyiagu, for joining me tonight on the Eastern Eye.
Thank you, Alex. Good evening, listeners.
So, typically, anytime the word accountability is mentioned, people think it's just about government explaining how much they have spent. But this is not what accountability is about, isn't it?
It is not about people getting from government how government operates on day-to-day basis, how much was spent and things like that. Holding people in government accountable goes beyond that. It involves a lot of things that come into play to in order to hold government accountable, to put government in check, because a situation where government or people in government are not held accountable, that is where you see issues of bad governance being in place, and then so many other wrong things that go on. So holding people in government or the government itself accountable is a lot of things. It involves things like having access to information, a situation where people have free access to information. You want to know about perhaps what is going on in the legislature, how they are making the laws, how they are carrying the interest of the people. It is a process, it is a way of holding government accountable. Because when the legislators know that people will come, like people will come and sit in the gallery to watch them deal with issues that pertain to the people, of course you know that whatever anybody is doing, that person will be very, very careful. If I may cite an example, during the era of President Obasanjo, we could remember that there was a time this idea of having a third term was being propagated, and it got to a point that that matter came before the National Assembly, then before the Senate, and it got to the point of voting. You remember, people were expecting the National Assembly, particularly the Senate under the leadership of Senator Ken Naman, to be transparent and to carry the people along, because holding government accountable also implies carrying the people along in whatever government is doing, taking the interests of people into cognizance. So because the matter was a very naughty one, it was a very naughty issue, and the Nigerians were so much interested in it that the whole polity was charged. So, and people wanted to know how the senators would vote. First of all, Nigerians demanded that the voting will not be by voice vote, that it will be by direct voting, of indicating where you belong, either yes or no. So, and in order to achieve this, the leadership of the then Senate decided that that process, that exercise, was going to be televised. It was going to be broadcast live, both by the radio and the television, so that Nigerians would watch. So you see now, it is a way of carrying people along, and it is another way of holding government accountable. So on issues of holding government accountable, that is where you talk about free and fair election. A situation where there will be free and fair election in deciding who becomes what. For people to choose their leaders, it has to be through the electoral process. And in doing that, through that electoral process, the electoral process has to be free and fair in order to for that election to have credibility, for people to say, yes, this is how we voted, and our votes counted, our votes were respected, there was no manipulation and things like that. So many things come into play. Even the legal framework, you have legal framework, you have laws guiding the society, you have laws guiding the operation of government. It is a way, it is a process of holding government accountable, ensuring that government does not deviate from what it ought to do to the for the people, so that it wouldn't be a situation where you begin to see people in government lording things over the people and having disrespect, not having any regards for the people, because the people surrendered their sovereignty to you.
All right, that's right.
They surrendered their sovereignty to you to do certain things on their behalf.
Let me just ask this question so you can also deepen what you are answering. What do you consider the major challenges to accountability in Nigeria at various levels of government? And how do you think that they can be addressed?
Yeah, the major challenges stem from the fact of not respecting those instruments of governance that were put in place to make government accountable. Take, for instance, on matter of holding government accountable, that is where you talk about some institutions, independent institutions. And these independent institutions, you have agencies like the anti-corruption agency, you have things like the EFCC, the anti-fraud agency, and the Code of Conduct Bureau, because the Code of Conduct Bureau is an agency that guides the operations of the civil service and the public service, including the actors who are called either public servants or civil servants. So the point where they deviate from observing these rules, from following the norms, the laid down policies, the laid down procedure of doing things, that is where you now begin to have the issue of what you have talked about. They are not following the rules, they are not obeying the laws. The anti-corruption agencies will just be there just for the sake of being there, instead of using it to checkmate the real actors of governance or government. You are now using it as instrument of witch hunt, instrument of victimization, instrument of oppression, of suppressing information, oppressing the vocal people in the society. We have seen situations where people that are very critical of government, instead of government listening to them and acting accordingly for common good, for the good of the people. You find a situation where government will go and look at that person. Maybe if he has a business establishment somewhere, they will go and they try find one way or the other to stifle that business, or even to make frivolous allegations upon the person and then begin to hound the person, persecute him, just in order to cow him, in order to suppress him to stop him from criticizing government activities. So these are some of the things that, do not give room for the issue of accountability, where you don't have a free press.
That's right.
Like we have today, we see in situations where there is, yes, the press or the media, they are there, but they are not free to operate. You see a situation where a government or a governor or even the presidency, they are averse to free press. They are impervious to free press. As Afia TV is today, if somebody comes here to air one's opinion and which a government considers negative, to be anti-government, you see the government going after the Afia TV establishment just to muzzle it down. So, and under this situation, you don't have free press. Even the press themselves, the media themselves, they even because of pecuniary interest, decided to gag themselves, decided to sanction themselves to do, because we have seen situations, and it's quite alarming, a situation where people who call themselves public affairs analysts, they went and formed an organization, and they used that organization as something to get largesse or so from government. Now government gives them money, and they will come on TV or radio to talk good, where even they see that government is doing wrong things, government is not governing well, is not doing well, they will be saying things are going on well. When in the real sense of it, things are not going, people are groaning, people are lamenting. So these things, you find them here and there, everywhere, and which means we are not having free press as it should be, because free press is one of those instruments meant for accountability of people in government.
All right,
but
so
we don't have
Sir Abuchi Anueyiagu, so why would you blame the press? Well, just like you've made an accusation now that some public affairs analysts formed an organization and collected money from government to say nice things.
So I heard.
So why would you blame the media houses? Did the media houses give them money too?
No. The issue, I'm not blaming the media houses. Rather, I am saying that the media houses, some of them that decide to do things to hold government accountable, you see government coming down heavily on them, just to suppress them, just to subdue them. We have seen it happen in so many places, on so many occasions, where even the proprietors or the owners of such a media houses are called by phone, are called privately to warn their staff, to warn their staff. Their staff is being anti-government, is attacking us, is using the platform of your establishment to attack government. We have had such cases. It happens. So it's not a matter of blaming the media. Yeah. No, rather the media is at the receiving end.
Yes, okay, you have answered that. So the issue you raised, especially regarding the institutions that monitor the activities of either public servants or civil servants, all of them tend to belong to a particular arm of government, the executive. Is this a disturbing development, knowing that it's only the executive that has the power over the police, that has the power over the institution you cited,
yes,
Code of Conduct Bureau, the anti-corruption agencies, yes, ICPC, and EFCC. So you are also now suspecting that, well, could that be the reason why everything is the way they are?
Of course, because it is said that he who pays the piper dictates the tune. We all know about this. So, and the person that appointed you, the person that put you there, would you be against the person? The answer is no. So, because the appointments are left in the hands of a particular arm of government, so the appointees, of course, you don't expect them to owe their allegiance to some other person other than the person that appointed them, and that is the executive. So the executive decides the fate of everybody, decides the fate of who becomes what, who gets what, and at any given time. So that is why it is lopsided. Even the other arms of government, they are at the mercy of those agencies, because if you don't behave well, the executive will use any of those agencies to go after you. We saw what happened. Do you remember during the time of Bukola Saraki? We all saw what happened. Even though he was the Senate president, the head, the leader of the legislative arm of government in Nigeria, but he was hounded. Those agencies were used then to suppress him, because what he was doing, the government of the day at the time considered it to be averse to itself. I mean, the government, that is when you talk about the government, the executive arm of government then felt that Saraki was being stubborn, and Saraki was unnecessarily and unduly working against them, working against their interests. So they now decided to use those agencies under their control to frustrate Saraki, to go after him. But even though they didn't succeed, but we all saw eventually that Saraki didn't return to the Senate, even when he tried to run for another term. It was so difficult for him that they made it possible that his sister was the one that now defeated him, displaced him, and got to the Senate. So it shows you the power of the person that makes appointment. So the allegiance is to the person that makes the appointment. The allegiance is to the man who dictates the tune, and because he is the one paying the piper, and that's the issue. So the other arms of government, even the judiciary too, they have to remain calm. They have to remain quiet. Otherwise, maybe the can of worms, the man will just pull the drawer.
Yeah,
pull his drawer, and then
that's actually where there's
kata will start busting.
Yeah, that's another big issue. How can Nigeria's institutions, such as the judiciary and legislature, be strengthened to hold the executive branch accountable? Because the way you have also sounded, even before we got into this discussion now, is suggesting that it looks like the judiciary are just there. So, but is it possible that the judiciary can stand on their own? And what are the obstacles stopping the judiciary and the legislative arms from actually standing on their own?
Yes, the judiciary can stand on their own. You know, there was a time it was said that because judiciary was not self-accounting, that was why the judiciary had encumbrances in delivering justice to the people. But we got to a point where we began to hear that judiciary had become self-accounting. But I wouldn't know to what extent now. Is it only in terms of remuneration or whatever? Because the issue of appointment or confirmation of appointment still lies within a particular arm of government, and that is the executive. That is why the executive still has some influence, some overbearing influence over the judiciary, because when you remember that maybe something could be done and then you are removed as a judge or as somebody head of a judiciary, you'll be forced to be mindful of how you conduct yourself and how you operate. We all were witnesses to what happened during the last general elections, where people became disappointed with what transpired at the judiciary section of our judiciary arm of government over adjudication of election matters. People became so disappointed because there were matters people felt that, look, even an elementary 6, elementary 5 pupil would know what will be the outcome of a particular, the judgment or the verdict of a particular case. But in the end, it went another way, it went the other way. That is why the judiciary may tell you, it can go one way or the other. It can go either way. So the people felt disappointment because they felt that the judiciary, the executive had so much influence upon it. And then the issue of integrity comes into play. Again, you can only give what you have. You cannot give what you don't have. Where you don't have the integrity, you don't have integrity, or even if you have integrity and you don't have the strength of character to sustain that integrity, of course you will be left to compromise whatever integrity that you have because of extraneous influences which the person allowed to exert on that person. So that's the point. That's the issue. So you now begin to see a situation where the judiciary itself, for reasons best known to them, they decided to disappoint the people by the way they handled some critical cases, very important cases in the country, cases that matter to the people, cases that would affect the lives of the people as we are witnessing currently in Nigeria. So, because if not for those, the way those cases, those election cases were adjudicated, probably Nigeria wouldn't have been as it is today. So, but unfortunately, the judiciary didn't live up to the expectations because the people had so much expectations, so much trust, so much hope so much faith on the judiciary. But in the end, they became disappointed and disgusted. And that is why in so many places today, when you are talking about the judiciary and the independence of the judiciary, people look at them with so much reservation.
But is there any rebounding of the judiciary? Because from your analysis, there's a lot that is left to be desired on the part of the judiciary. Do you think that that's something that needs to happen for the judiciary to actually stand on their own? Because from your analysis, it doesn't look like they are on their own. They seem to be, be influenced by others. If they are the last hope of the common man, shouldn't they have some level of independence that can give people hope?
Yeah, they should. They should, because it is said that the judiciary is the last hope of the common man. And it carries so much weight, so much burden. But unfortunately, nowadays, they are not living up to that expectation, up to that billing. So they can redeem themselves, the judiciary can redeem itself internally, inwardly, by deciding to keep their integrity, by deciding to do a kind of internal in-house cleaning, to decide to serve the people, and not to serve the interest of some few individuals, powerful individuals or strong men, like Obama will say. If they decide to desist from serving the vested interest of the strong men in the society, then they will begin to redeem themselves, they will begin to reclaim themselves and redeem their image as it is battered today by themselves and not by anybody, because they decided to disappoint the people, and then it is left for them to do self-restitution and reclaim that integrity they had previously, when we had justices like late Chukwudifu Oputa and some of them like that. So that they can, like, to use their word, they can do a rebound if they so desire. Everything depends on them. It is like the Igbos will say, no bido tata debama, no obido kwanabu. So the opportunity is very much there for them to redeem themselves, redeem their image, and rekindle the confidence people had previously in them. That is what matters. That's the critical issue. By the way they will adjudicate, by the way they will handle cases, critical cases, very, very important cases that affect the lives of the people. By so doing, by the time they start doing so, to the admiration of the people, then they will begin to redeem themselves.
All right, this is the Eastern Hour here on Afia TV. When we come back from this break, we'll take a look at what the people can do in deepening engagement and, of course, restoring accountability in governance. And what are the potential advantages of those, the accountability that we seek as a nation? Stay with us after the break. You're welcome back to the Eastern Hour here on Afia TV, a program that x-rays the political, social, and economic developments around us. My name is Alex Ogbodo, and we are reaching you live from Enugu, Southeast Nigeria. With me in the studio still is Sir Abuchi Anueyiagu, veteran journalist and public affairs analyst. So let's talk about the whole idea of citizens' engagement. You know, maybe you can count on one hand how many governors of the Southeast or even of Nigeria that organize town halls, to even talk to their people and even listen to them. Do you think that having such regular fora where people can at least ask questions, maybe not everyone can ask questions, but the fact that there is an opportunity for the people to talk to the people they elected, ditto for those at the National Assembly, how many of them are organizing town halls? They are actually the ones who should be organizing town halls, because if it's actually there, it's embedded in one of the things they should undertake as legislators. Other than that, how would you be speaking for someone if you don't organize town halls?
Yes, Alex, you got it right here. Having the people engaged in government through civil society organizations or through civil society affirmative actions, they are all part of, that is what is called the citizenship engagement in government and or in governance. So because they have the right, as I said earlier, about having free access to information. The people, they have right to know what is happening in the government, because government is there on their behalf. They surrendered their sovereignty to the people, to those in government, to run on their behalf, because everybody cannot come to, let's say, government house now and begin to run government and begin to chatter. No, you have people selected to hold brief on your behalf. So that is that. So people should, holding of town hall meetings, they are part of the ways of carrying people along, of having citizenship engagement in governance. A situation where you don't do that, you become alienated from the people. You automatically alienated, you alienate yourself from the people that you ought to have been very close to. You ought to have been with them to know how they are feeling, because it is only when you are close to somebody, they say that no onya no madu so na anushi onya. But when you are very far away from that person, there is no way you would know how the smell of the person's mouth or something like that. So when you alienate yourself from the people, you wouldn't know what is their problem. You wouldn't know what is their area of interest. Until you do that, you'll be able to know, and you'll be able to give the people confidence. Like, look, that government is thinking about, is having our interest in mind. For the mere fact that periodically the governor comes around to hold unhindered interface, unhindered interaction with the people, it means a lot, it matters a lot, because you will feel free. If you are doing well, I keep saying it, if you are doing well, like Jerry Ghana will say, if you are this, you do. If you are a governor, you govern well. If you are a governor anywhere and you are governing well, the signs will be there, the people will know. And when you call them, you will, of course, have unhindered interaction with them, not a guided one, because some of these town hall meetings that we talk about are very, very well guided. They wouldn't like people who will come and, usually the government agents, those working for government, they will say, those who will come there and embarrass government. How are you embarrassing government? Because you ask questions about so things that happened, and then some people will feel that you're embarrassing government. How? I wouldn't know why. Is the government or is the governor or the president not accountable to the people, or not there on behalf of the people? So if they ask you, if you come during interaction with the people and an issue comes up, somebody raises a very critical issue, you answer. If you do not know what to say, you can, after all, in the media practice, we have had occasions where we are interviewing somebody and he said no comment. So the person cannot force you to say something that you don't want to say. So, but this idea of having guided interaction under the guise of a town hall, it is not the ideal thing. Town hall should be town hall, where everybody will have equal access. You provide security and things like that. And then, without, trying to be too protective, somebody that raises the person's hand from among the crowd in a gathering there, you allow the person to ask the question. The question, because that question the person is asking bothers him so much, bothers the person so much. And that's why, having seen the governor, having seen the president, having seen the legislator, either the senator or the House of Assembly member or the House of Reps member, or even the local government chairman present, they will now feel free to ask questions to find out why so things are not happening the way they should. So, organizing interactive sessions with the people, physical interactive sessions, I think it is a part of the tool of governance for those that understand, for those that would know that it is something very, very necessary. So town hall meetings, I think they are very, very necessary in terms of governance, but provided the town hall meetings are not guided and are not preventive or preventable, from the people. That is a situation where you prevent the people, so much people you perceive as enemies of government or people who are not friends of government, and then you try to shield them away, you try to exclude them from such interaction. It's not the ideal thing.
That's right. But Sir Abuchi Anueyiagu, what do you consider some of the potential consequences of not really prioritizing accountability in Nigeria's government, and how do you think Nigeria should be dealing with that?
Okay. What you have said in summary brings about failed government. Because where there is no accountability, you begin to see things being done wrongly, being done at the whims and caprices of those in power. They now decide the fate of people, and that is why people will come and make unpopular policies and unpopular programs, such as heavy taxation of people without minding. When in modern times, a government ought to be encouraging micro and small scale businesses. Rather, the government is using taxation and the levies to stifle those governments, because that government is not accountable to the people. And when you make yourself not accountable to the people, you will be erring. You will not be doing things that will appeal to them. You will not be doing things that they will like, because you will be doing things according to your own whims, things that you consider that maybe will serve your interest, without knowing that it is not serving the interest of the common good of the people. So that's where these things are not happening, where accountability is not happening. Mainly, you now begin to have cases of failure in government, failure in governance, failed government. So that's the problem, that's the situation. And when these things are happening, whoever that comes up to say, look, things are going wrongly, things are not doing well, the government is not performing well, the government is not doing well, you now see they begin to brand the person as enemy of government. But the person is telling the truth. The issue of whimsical removal of the so-called fuel subsidy was not the ideal thing that ought to have been done then. It ought to have taken a gradual process, even if they had wanted to remove the fuel subsidy. It ought to have been done in a very gradual and seamless way, that the people will not feel it, that the impact will not be so heavy on the economy and on the lives of the people. But we have seen it. Just one pronouncement somebody made on May 29, 2023. So thing has been removed, that it has gone for good, and we all are bearing the consequences, the calamity of that pronouncement till today. Is because the person in government was quite insensitive to the dangers, to what would become the consequences of the action being carried. So the result of not being accountable to the people is failure of government, failed governance, and things like that. That's the way I look at it. Where you fail to be accountable to the people, you become a lord of manor. You don't allow them to make contributions. You don't allow them, the people, to have their say in what you are doing. Then you are, it's like somebody will say that if you fail to, he says, I think if you fail to plan, then you have planned to fail. So that's what it is. That's the way it is. But without accountability, perhaps there will be no good governance.
That's right. But should the citizens fold their arms? Citizens, civil society organizations, should they fold their arms if government fail to be accountable? What needs to be done from the level of the citizens and even civil society organizations?
Yes, the people have their own responsibility too, to hold government accountable, where the government is saying is resisting accountability. No, it is the duty, the responsibility of the people being governed to force, to insist on holding government accountable. Yes, you will see some resistance, but you shouldn't be deterred. You shouldn't be deterred. Instead of sitting idly and keep complaining, keep groaning, keep lamenting, keep wailing, you do something, you organize themselves, and that is where the civil society organizations are failing in today's Nigeria, because they are the ones to mobilize the people, to galvanize the people under the platform of citizenship participation, because you have what is called participatory governance or participatory government. And who are the people? The vehicles to achieving this are the civil society organizations in the country. But you find out that nowadays they have left what ought to be their role in the society, and then they begin to pursue some other things, and even begin to look for sponsorships from outside the country in terms of aids and all that, to do one thing or the other, then leaving the critical job that they ought to do to mobilize the people to hold the government accountable. Yes, the people, they have that responsibility to hold government accountable for their own good. But unfortunately, in many cases today, it is not being done. Rather, the people are complaining. And that is why, at times, you now begin to see some kind of revolutionary actions, such as protests here and there, like the one they organized, was it last year or last 2 years? They organized a protest, and that protest, of course, failed because of the apathy of Nigerians towards holding government accountable, because of fear of going to be killed. And you don't blame the people. Everybody runs for their life. So the citizens should evolve, look at the whole situation, and evolve another means of holding government accountable. So they have a right, the citizens, they have a right to act accordingly to hold government accountable for their own good, because government is not there for the particular interests of only those in government, but government, they are there for common good, for the interest of everybody, for general interest matters. So that's what I can say. Yes, I agree with you that the people should have a role to play in holding government accountable. Yes.
So, Sir Abuchi Anueyiagu, do you think the situation with Nigeria is hopeless? Or do you think it is redeemable?
The situation in Nigeria is obviously hopeless, because there is no end in sight.
But is it redeemable?
It could be redeemable if Nigerians will agree. And who are these Nigerians to agree? These institutions, these so-called independent institutions that are there for accountability, for good governance. And what are these institutions? The institutions, the agencies that are responsible for conduct of election, for the electoral process, the agencies, they ensure that under no circumstance henceforth should there be any form of manipulation of the electoral process to favor one person or the other. No, let there be a level playing ground for everybody, a free and fair election. And in the end, whoever that emerged through a free, fair, and square election without any ambiguity, without any bitterness and rancor, without having credibility questions. That is one. You have strong institutions like the judiciary. The judiciary living up to their billings as the last hope of the common man. The judiciary adjudicating well as they ought to be, without fear or favor, without allowing themselves to be manipulated or to be induced or to be influenced by any external forces to favor those manipulators. So if we have strong judiciary, we have strong independent institutions like INEC, all these anti-corruption agencies. You go to government places today, you see high level of corruption. Corruption, the other day, we were looking at an issue, and some indices said that if you go to a place like Abuja today, some of those big houses you find in Sokoro, in Meitema, and such high-brow areas in Abuja, they are owned by civil servants. So how did they come about? The monies, the resources they used in building those things, if not through corruption, through graft. Otherwise, how can a civil servant, how much are you owning? How much are you earning for you to own such properties in such highbrow places? So these are the things, because the institutions, the independent institutions that ought to check all these inadequacies and imperfections in the system, they are just there. They are just being there without doing much to serve the interests of the people, to serve the common good. That is why we could remember the era when Buhari just assumed office in Nigeria, and then the first budget he made for Nigeria, there was this controversial issue of padding of budget, inflating of prices and things like that. It is in government quarters that you see all those things. Even the politician that is accused of corruption or is accused of embezzlement of public funds, he didn't do it alone. He did it with the connivance of civil servants. He did it with the connivance of public servants. So you find a situation where you have a highly corrupt civil service. So that is another thing. That is, if we begin to have things done well in their proper places, if we begin to have institutions that will be able to check this, and you are owning this house, how did you come about it? Then you begin to see some sanity, some level of sanity within the system. So for me, it is when these institutions, independent institutions, begin to do justice to their responsibilities, begin to do things right, begin to do things the way they could, then you begin to talk about maybe having hope, having faith that it is going to be good. Otherwise, the way things are today, it is still a hopeless situation, because there is no end to it in sight.
All right. We hope that there will be something that will bring redemption to all the situations cited. Thank you so much, Sir Abuchi Anueyiagu, veteran journalist and public affairs analyst. Thank you, as always, for your perspectives on the Eastern Eye tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the Eastern Eye tonight. Tomorrow we'll have another edition of the program. My name is Alex Ogbodo. Good night.